Victoria Thomas.
I'm Millicent Livin.
I'm Chase Ballard.
And I'm Bo Smith, and we're Group 6 holding it together.
The first step in the engineering design process is to define the problem. Our problem was to create a fabric bucket that can transport clean water, is portable and compressible. The fabric bucket must be able to hang from a hook, fit in a 6x4 by 4 inch container, cannot be larger than 24 inches in height, hold 1 gallon of water for 1 minute, be 50% fibrous material, cannot have any pre-made materials, and no harmful chemicals.
The second step of the engineering design process is to brainstorm. We went through a number of ideas when we were trying to decide how to do our fabric bucket. We thought about using linseed oil, 3 layers of fabric for our bucket, coating the inside with tar, including a drawstring on our bucket, and melting a mixture of beeswax, resin, and vegetable oil using 2 layers of fabric. We decided not to use linseed oil because it's spontaneous combustible. We decided not to use 3 layers of fabric because we didn't have enough money to buy 3 layers of fabric, and it probably wouldn't have been compressible into the 4x4 by 6 inch container. We didn't use tar because that would make the fabric bucket, we couldn't bend it and put it into the container that we had to do. We didn't use the drawstring because we thought that it would make the bucket more prone to falling apart and you wouldn't be able to carry it. We decided to use the mixture of beeswax, resin, and vegetable oil using 2 layers of fabric because it met all of the requirements and it seemed to work pretty well.
The third and a very important part of the engineering design process is planning and preparation. One thing we had to plan was the gathering of materials to stay in budget. We had to figure out who was getting what. We could only use $40. Another part was setting up meetings so we could stay on track for our weekly goals, to get done what we needed to get done. Another part we had to plan was utilizing campus resources like the Craft Center. Another one is just the basic course of action and bucket development, what we needed to do to get the bucket done on time, and it all pretty much comes down to the communication between all group members.
The fourth step in the engineering design process is to create, which is making our product and testing it out. So first we sewed our bucket. We met at the Craft Center, and it took multiple hours just to get everything together, figure out how to use the sewing machine. And then we met another time to waterproof our bucket. We brought our own pot that we bought at a secondhand store and all our components, and we used an outdoor burner that you plugged in, and we melted all of our components and painted them on our bucket. And finally, we dried our bucket in our dorm room, and it took several days to dry, but it worked out okay. And then we tested our bucket. It held more than a gallon for more than a minute, so we were happy with it meeting the requirements, and we practiced folding it after that just to make sure that it fit in the 4x4 by 6 container, and it did. The final step of the engineering design process is to improve, and because our bucket met the requirements when we tested it originally, we decided that there was nothing we needed to do to change it before FEDD day, so we just kept it as it was. During our design process, we faced multiple challenges that we didn't really see coming. First and foremost, we faced a challenge with linseed oil. As we were researching, we really almost got to the point where we were going to buy it, and then we realized that linseed oil is known to spontaneously combust and cause very large house fires, which is not good, so we decided not to use that. We had to change our plan. And then also, when we were melting our mixture for our bucket, there were fumes that we had to worry about. So instead of being able to use a lounge or an indoor heating source, we had to go to the Craft Center and use an external heater to melt our wax. And then finally, the sewing machine was actually kind of difficult to work because it was an industrial grade sewing machine and it was the Craft Center's. So we had to learn how to use that, which took some time before we got to sew our actual bucket.
At Fed Day, came in first, brought home gold to Miss Starling, so we did pretty well.
So when we got to Fed Day, we noticed that a lot of the other fabric bucket groups had posters explaining the design process of how they made their fabric bucket. So if we had to do our whole project over, I would probably suggest making a poster for Fed Day about like just the steps that you went through in your design process on making the fabric bucket. Another thing that would change is making our bucket a little bit more like fashionable, or like putting a logo on it or painting it or something, because our bucket was by far like the least fashionable out of all of them. I mean, it still worked, but you know.
Got first place.
And then one more thing I would change is possibly making our bag a little bit smaller, because going into Fed Day, we stressed a lot about whether or not it was going to fit into the 4" by 6" container. So luckily it fit in, but just to like eliminate the stress, I would make it a little bit smaller.
Some advice for next year's freshmen: come up with a good plan and weekly goals and stick to them to stay on track. It's a big one. Be proactive. Get things done on time, or preferably ahead of time, like we did as a group. Utilize resources. The Craft Center really helped us get our bag together and get our coating on our fabric bucket. Communicate is a huge one. I would advise you to start a group message as soon as you know your group members. It helps communicate a lot. And don't procrastinate, it's the biggest one.